Thanks for your patience, everyone. We were just trying to squeeze everyone into this tight fit. So thank you for your patience while we did that. I think we managed to get everyone in the room, and hopefully with a plate of food. My name is Shannon Kelly, and I just want to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. In a moment, our elder Alf is going to come up, but I just wanted to mention a couple pragmatic things. We are recording this, so when it comes to question period, or questions or response from our panelists, please hold the mic like me, a couple inches from your mouth, not down here. Also, most of you have noticed that there is a survey on the table for each person, and that's purely voluntary, of course. But our faculty champion, Catherine Golder, has gotten ethics approval for this survey, and she is the one who championed this panel today, and so she's gathering more data. If you're willing to do the survey, please take the time through the event to fill it out. That would be great. And the other thing on your table are just these big sheets in the middle where if you want to jot down anything as the panel goes forward, you know, thoughts, questions for later, questions for the organizers, ideas, feel free to write your observations on these sheets. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Alf Dumont.
Ani Bojo, Alfred Dumont Indigenicaz, Bedaben Magizi Anis Nabe Ni Winch, Wawasheshki and Dodem, Shanaga and Dujnaba, Kekwetlam, and De Nungum. My name is Alf Dumont. I have a traditional name of Break of Day, Eagle. I have come from the Martin clan, or have been accepted by the Martin clan back into the traditional territory. I come from a community called Shanaga, which is on the east coast of Georgian Bay, and I now live in Coquitlam territory. Ani Bojo means hello, how are you going? But it also relates to Wayna Bojo. It says, are you the one who was lowered from the Creator to search out that relationship with Spirit? So when somebody says Bojo to you, they're saying, are you that one? It's an honor to be asked that question. I was asked to speak. I know you're talking about women and two-spirited people in engineering and how that is unfolding. I was at a play last night. Barb and I were celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. 47 years of walking together, but 40 years of... I didn't expect applause for that. And we were at a play called Thanks for Giving. It's a play written by an Indigenous playwright from territories around the Lytton area. And it had to do with function, dysfunction, working together interculturally, disrespecting culture, all within family. It also had to do with two-spirited people in the family coming out. They didn't announce their coming out, somebody else did in the family. So that long journey of relationships and how do we walk together well with each other. One of the teachings that came to mind as I was watching this play, which is very hard to watch because it's hard to watch dysfunction, was the teaching of the seven grandfathers. We are given teachings in the Anishinaabe way of those seven grandfather teachings being respect and love, honesty and humility, courage, truth, and wisdom. But we're also given a sub-teaching to that which says you can't have any one of those without the other. They're all interrelated. You cannot have love without respect. You cannot have honesty without courage. You cannot have honesty without humility. So they're all interrelated. And I was thinking of that as those people were talking among themselves. And as we talk among ourselves, We are asked to take those teachings which we are given and to plant them deep in ourselves so that when we come to the time where we relate to each other, we will bring those teachings forward. We're also given other teachings. In the Anishinaabe way, we are told to go and find yourself. You go for a vision. You find out what the Spirit says to you about who you are. You're given the liberty to be yourself. But you're also given a balance to that teaching which says, when you own yourself, when you take responsibility for putting those teachings in your life and seek to live them in a good way, then you are to go and relate to other people. And when I share my story with you, you listen. When you share your story with me, I listen. So when two of us bump up against one another, we share our stories. We try to understand those stories. And when we hear those story of another, it changes our story. So we become a different person. When we share our story with a third person, a fourth person, our story begins to change as well. When we refuse to change, that's when we have difficulty. We are asked to honor the other person because they are on an independent journey themselves. But their independent journey always is relational. It comes back to how I relate to other people. So we're asked to walk in that way with others. I'll tell you a simple story. As we were walking from the restaurant over to the theater in Granville, Barb had stubbed her toe a couple of days ago, and it was very sore. And we were walking along, holding hands, motoring along, and she said, "Stop pulling me." A reminder that sometimes we have our own agendas, and we have to be reminded by the other person that it's not their agenda. And we need to hear their story at that time and change the direction in which we are going. Humbling experiences, but after 40 years, you learn to listen. And I want to end on one thing. It's an old statement that I often refer back to. Part of relations is about dialogue. The tongue has no bones, but it can break a heart. Be careful with the words you use and how you share them. Miigwech.
Thank you, Alf, for your words. Very much appreciated. And thank you and congratulations again on your anniversary. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Joanna Wallace. So Joanna is alumni of BCIT, and she's also Catherine Golder's research partner in this research that we're doing. And basically, she will be moderating, and I know that you're all really interested to hear what the panelists have to say, and Joanna will lead us down that path. Thanks, Joanna.
Hi, everyone. I'm first like to say that I'm very impressed with the diversity circles. I've never spoken in such a formal room before, so I'm very impressed. Thank you for putting this together for us. So to introduce the talk today, I wanted to explain what got us here. And of course, women in engineering is a huge topic, and I couldn't talk about it within a few minutes. Sorry, I didn't listen to the instructions at first. So what I wanted to do is just explain where the conversation began between Catherine and I. So I was here for a career panel explaining what I do for a living, and I was one of two women that Catherine often calls on because there aren't that many from our program. Afterwards, we were chatting, and a question came up about women in engineering and where they all were. We wanted to understand why this was the case, so we started off on a quest to find some answers. The news media is starting to answer some of these questions, but some of the news media is biased, and it doesn't always give us a way to proceed. It just gives us causes of problems, not fixes. So we wanted to figure out why was it worth fixing and what could we do to do this. And that's what we want to talk about today. So for me, what I'm going to do is just tell you my story and how I got here. So my dad's an engineer. And so from birth, I was exposed to science and engineering and circuit boards. And I never knew that there was a shortage of women in STEM careers. I was always, as a child, encouraged to do my math homework over art. Sorry for the artists. But I found that that gave me the practice and gave me the encouragement, even as a woman, that I needed. So I never knew that it was a problem for women in math. I never was told that I couldn't do a math problem because I was a girl. At UBC, which was my first degree, half the class was women as well. So I also never knew that there was a problem for women in science. When I got to BCIT, that's when I noticed the problem. On orientation day, there was about 150 people in the room and about a dozen women. This made me feel very uncomfortable at first because I wasn't sure how to react. After the first week, probably about half of the girls had dropped out already. And still I didn't understand the problem. Why were they leaving? Why weren't they there in the first place? After 4 years at BCIT, I was the first woman to graduate from the BEng program in electrical engineering, which still surprises me. I got some reactions just at the table today saying, really, you were the first? And there's actually only been 2, and now there's 1 more in the pipeline. But 2 more. Oh, sorry. Thank you for correcting me. 2 more in the pipeline. So one day, one of my instructors, close to graduation, decided to give me a round of applause for my achievement. And at first, I was very uncomfortable by this. Because what had I done that my peers hadn't? I took the same tests, we did the same projects. I thought that my peers would think poorly on me because they knew this as well. But then I realized that I overcame something that they didn't necessarily have to. I overcame people telling me that I wasn't masculine enough, that I couldn't get through the problem solving because I was a woman, and that I was just in engineering to meet guys. That was another good one. And I got off lucky because I had this background that gave me the confidence to know that they were wrong. Not every woman has that. So today we're having our first conversation here with how you as leaders can help women through these programs. It's not complete. We're missing some of the faculties and some diversity too. We can't encompass everything, but we needed a place to start. And so that's what we're doing today. So, to start off, I would like to invite our first speakers up, and that is Mirella and Stephanie.
Hello?
Hello.
So is it working?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, good.
So to introduce these 2 lovely ladies, Mirella is an instructor and an option head for the technology programming option for the School of Computing and Academic Sciences. And Stephanie is a student research assistant. She's in her 2nd year at in computer systems technology. So I suppose I will start off by asking you a question. So you've been researching strategies for improving women and girls' participation in science, technology, engineering, and math. What are some of the most interesting findings that you've found?
So I have a grant from BCIT to research to understand actually why do we have a gender gap in computing and to find ways to improve it. In my classroom, I sometimes have, from the 20 plus students, 0 female students. Sometimes I have 1, 2, sometimes I have 4. That was the maximum for my class. We have around 11% women in our school. we started the study in 2016, and we almost completed the qualitative component of the study. So we collected data from 21 participants. They are students, at that time, current students in our program, CST, or in CIT, or recent graduates. From the 21 participants, we had 11 female identifying participants. 2 of them were transgenders, and the rest were men. The students, so we try to attract and to get involved students who are with different academic and cultural backgrounds, and we even try to bring and interview students who stopped attending the program.
Yeah, so in terms of, is this thing on? In terms of attracting students to STEM, one of the main things that we found, and this was across the board, so regardless of gender, was prior exposure to computing. So of course, like you had mentioned, because you had sort of that comfort, that confidence, that background, you were obviously more likely to choose STEM as a career, of course, but also more confident in your choice once you came here. So students, and especially girls that had that background in knowing about tech and computing, were more confident in their choice, and they were more resilient in staying with that choice and not dropping out, say, in the first semester or the first week, because they knew that they wanted to do that.
We found that family support was really important. We found that parents, mothers, and fathers contributed to the decision of the participants to come into our program. Interestingly enough, many mothers influenced our participants to attend our program. This is consistent with a study I read about, which identify mothers really important to encourage high school kids to attend STEM careers. We also found that the school was important. High school and elementary school teachers are also supportive for our participants. Another important aspect is that fathers were important for girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of the girls that were successful in CST, which is the students we interviewed, most of them had very strong positive relationships with men. So fathers, uncles, brothers, older siblings, which was not really what we expected in terms of thinking of, women succeeding in a field. But yeah, men did play a very important role. And beyond that sort of support system, and going back to exposure, one big thing was, I guess, awareness of what this field actually entailed. So girls that knew that there was creativity, there was a lot of collaboration, and that they could use tech as a means to actually create a positive impact in the world, those were the girls that were more likely, I guess, to pursue STEM.
What kept them in our program? We believe resilience was really important. They came to our program knowing that it is difficult, that it is a lot of workload. They also knew that they are a minority, and they were resilient to stay, the ones who stayed. One thing that we found, and we didn't expect to find, I didn't expect to find, was actually harassment. From the 11 female identifying participants, 5 of them, one transgender, reported different instances of harassment and different kind of harassment, from sexual harassment to bullying, to the point that one of the participants reported that a friend of her left the program because of being bullied by her peers.
So just one last thing to touch on really quickly is we did find, in terms of stereotypes, that all of our participants, so males, females, all that, they all reported being aware of stereotypes. In the case of men, they reported that they were aware of stereotypes, but that they didn't actually hold any themselves. But when we asked them indirectly about other questions, it was actually shown that not only did they have these biased ways of thinking, but also in some cases they were just plain sexist. In the case of... yeah. In the case of women, again, they were, of course, aware of stereotype views, but obviously didn't care enough to not attend CST. But yeah, they were affected by bullying, harassment, and stereotypes in that sense. So one thing to, I guess, keep in mind is maybe making awareness of these stereotype issues and sort of teaching students about these things.
We will continue our study. We are right now finalizing the data analysis for the qualitative component. We'll continue with the quantitative component, and we'll try to see if our findings can be generalized.
Thank you.
Next, I'll invite up Allison. So Allison is also a BCIT graduate. We actually started at BCIT together. She was one of the 12 women also in the room, and she stuck around. She's an electrical designer now at Prism Engineering. So Allison, you came forward with quite a few questions, but we picked out one that we thought you could handle. Well, you could handle them all, sorry. I misphrased. I know you can handle anything, I've seen it. Why is better representation of gender diversity important to engineering and technology?
Right, thank you, Joanna, and to Catherine, and to everyone that put this diversity circle together. I know this is just the beginning, and I know that everyone in this room knows it's not just a problem at BCIT. This is not isolated to this campus. It's across Canada, and it has a lot to do with also what's happening around the world. So we have a big order of business in front of us, but it's really encouraging that there's so many people here from so many different programs and diverse backgrounds. So yeah, I'm a graduate in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Technology program. I would like to frame, though, my experience in that program at BCIT with a simple thing that I think had a lot to do with my staying in the program and my success. Not only was it the work that I was able to do with the fellow women-identified students, we really gravitate towards each other and found a support with each other, but also I was in the program starting when I was 25 years old. So I entered the program not as someone right out of high school, not as an 18-year-old girl, but as someone that had a lot of life experience behind me. And I think that made a big difference and maybe could help us in our future planning about what I carried with myself that we could help other women acquire much faster without having to start a program when they're 25. Engineering. What is an engineer? An engineer is a person who designs, builds, or maintains engines, machines, public works. That's one definition. And engineering is a person who has scientific training and who designs and builds complicated products, machines, systems, and or structures. To me, an engineer is someone that helps to control and frame human beings' interaction with the world around us. How we relate to the environment, how we relate to buildings, how we relate to really everything that we touch and we can feel, like computers, for example. And there's problems with all of these things, and there's necessary innovations. And essentially, I think engineers or technologists, because I'm a proud technologist, are problem solvers. So I think on a basic level, it really makes sense that in order to solve a problem, you want the most diversity of opinions as possible. And we have to ask ourselves, why isn't this happening? Why are we not seeing it as valuable? Because there's lots of studies out there showing that the top Fortune 500 companies, those that have women on their boards or in their leadership, are more profitable, more successful. If we're going to plan how humans interact with the world and our environment without a diversity of all solutions, then all humans aren't going to be included. And that's a huge portion of society that could help us in building a more inclusive and stronger community, country, world. And to me, it's not just about fairness and representation, which is something we should all be concerned about, but it's also about how we've limited our solutions. In one example, safety. If we're talking about building a building and integrating all those different systems together, who is there that's part of the design team that's going to remind people about how it needs to be well lit and safe for everyone, where the washrooms need to be, that sort of thing. Really important. And I think that also another thing I found in reading was about turnover rate. Companies that Companies that hire people that are more diverse have a lower turnover rate because their culture is more inclusive, because people feel like they're more at home. They can have friends. They can see people that are like them and learn from each other. And that's really important when we talk about building a stronger industry. I also want to say that this, although it's a problem around the world, it's not a problem everywhere. There are countries around the world where women make up a large majority of the engineering workforce, where women are more represented. And so there are solutions that we can help find. And I think a lot of it has to do with the early on age that we're talking about making sure women know these careers are accessible to them and that they're important for them. But I think overall, I would just say that if we're going to solve the world's biggest problems, we need everyone to be involved. And that's why this should be on the table for everyone. And that's why I appreciate this forum so much. I'm lucky enough to work at a company, Prism Engineering. It's just on the other side here. We actually did the electrical and mechanical plans for the room that you are in right now. I'm happy to say that we have a large representation of women, a very inclusive workforce as well of the LGBT community. But we have a lot to work towards when it comes to leadership, and I think that's a big question too. But women have incredible emotional intelligence. We have a lot of leadership skills that aren't being utilized, and we need each and everyone's ideas if we're gonna build a better, more interesting world. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Now I'd like to invite up Stacy. So while she makes her way up, Stacy is an engineering technician for the City of New Westminster. She's in her second year of the civil engineering program, and she's also the co-president of the Women in Engineering Club.
Thank you.
So to start off with, I'd like to ask what drew you to engineering?
Well, I also grew up in a home that my father worked in public works. So he wasn't an engineer, but he's been out in the field forever. He always kind of told us we could do whatever we wanted, and he came home and he made infrastructure exciting to me. You know, he would walk in and say, you know, today I did this on utility work, and, you know, the water that comes from your tap is because of people like us, and this is what we do. And I'm going, wow, okay, I thought I just opened a tap, and here we went. So it was really interesting, and I was actually in the arts. I was a theater student, a little bit elaborate and out there, and he kind of was like, you know, I came from Portugal, I immigrated here for a better life, and, you know, why don't we try something a little bit different? So he kind of persuaded me in a little bit to join the City of Vancouver, which I did at the age of 18 years old. So right out of high school, I went and worked at the City of Vancouver, and I saw that beauty that he saw in infrastructure. So fast forward 12 years later, and I did things a little bit different. I went to BCIT and graduated in 2014 with a certificate in civil technology and public work supervision. And that's when I became an engineering technician with the City of New Westminster. And as I progressed within my career, I recognized that I wanted to do more. I wanted to sit at the table, and I wanted to bring in some of these innovative ideas, because we're at a place now where engineering can be different in civil. So with the support of my family and the support of my employer, here I am. So as you mentioned, I'm in my second year of civil engineering. I'm also continuing to work part-time, which has been challenging in itself. And I also sit here as the co-president of the Women in Engineering Club, because it was always important to me to persuade other females to kind of join the cause.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about what Women in Engineering does?
Sure. So from the Constitution, it says that the Women in Engineering Club builds a community among female BCIT engineering students in order to enhance student life by fostering a mentoring attitude between years and programs. So what we've done for that is, this is the first year we've actually held a mentorship program. So we are a club that ranges from civil engineering, mechanical, we have electrical representation, as well as mining representation. So what we've done is, those of us in higher years, in second, third, and fourth, have paired with first-year students. So this year, I was happy to announce that my mentee, who we also go to Big Info Night, I should mention. We're the only club that is invited to Big Info Night. So we sit and we have chats with potential students that want to come into the programs. So my mentee was somebody I spoke to last year at Big Info. So when I met her, she looked at me and she goes, "I thought it was you." So we met up before her first orientation day, where I was a couple of years ago, and then similar to a lot of the other women that were speaking, there was only a few of us in the room. And got to talk to her and inform her just to pay attention, talk to everyone. I'm here for you for support. It's another big thing we do. We support one another. So there's 11 of us on the executive. We've all kind of mentored one another. I don't think mentorship really lies with somebody necessarily older. I was fortunate that I came back to school at 30 years old, so I have a little bit of life experience. I know that there's still a lot more. But I partnered with someone who is 19, and I learned as much from her as she claims to have learned from me. So we do we do that as part of the club as well. We also promote female engineering enrollment through participation in community events. So as mentioned with Big Info, when BCIT holds their open houses, we're also there. I met a 9-year-old little girl this year. We built catapults together, and she promised me that she would be at BCIT in the future because she wants to be like an engineer like you girls, she says. So it was a lot of fun just to see all the different people. And we also promote a culture of inclusion in the engineering industry and within BCIT engineering programs for all students, including women and all people whom identify as a minority group. So this year we held our icebreaker event. We opened it up to really everyone, which was really nice. So we had really good representation from all the different programs. And we had some males attend this year, which was really great. And they came because they felt the same as we do, that we need to promote female engineers to come through our programs and offer them a level of support. So it was really nice to see a group of gentlemen come in as well.
That's great. Have you been getting feedback in general from different groups or from just specifically your mentees that's been positive? What sort of feedback are you getting on the work that you're doing, especially that you've changed this year?
We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. The mentees and mentors have really enjoyed their relationships and building. So we've been able to carry that throughout. We have had mostly, positive, positive representation.
Good.
Thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So far, this panel has been amazing. I'm so excited, and thank you, everyone, for your enthusiasm. I want to make it clear, the panel's not finished yet. We still have 2 amazing panelists who will speak after the round table, but we want to give everyone a chance to, if you need to get up and move around, possibly refresh your glass of water, like the one I knocked down, but it was empty, fortunately, and not made of glass. And also, there are at least 4 empty chairs over here. So those of you who were stuck standing on the periphery, please come and find an empty chair over on this side of the room for the round table. There's at least 4. There's 1 there, 2 there, 1 here. Yeah, so lots of empty chairs. And as soon as you're ready, as quickly as reasonably possible, get right to the round table discussions. If you can have a volunteer recorder to help capture the answers to these questions, so you can see the 2 questions are on the screen. If someone at the table can volunteer to record, that would be fantastic. We have the proverbial giant flip chart paper. And of course, it doesn't just have to be one person recording. Everyone can grab a marker and write rapidly as well, or doodle as you wish. So please get into the round tables. If you need to stand up for a few minutes or find a chair, please do, but come right back. And we still have 2 panelists to go. Thank you.
So Diversity Circles was founded based on responding to diversity and how diversity is expanding in the communities in general, but also in the post-secondary education landscape specifically.
The Diversity Circles team had the vision to convene an interrelated array of dialogues and workshops aimed in part at generating concrete, faculty-specific ideas about catalyzing the great potential embedded in BCIT's growing diversity.
There's all kinds of elements to it. There's elements around the events, there's the workshops, there's the pieces that we write, but really for me it's about the relationships that we build through this process.
I came into this and realizing that we could celebrate these groups using an Indigenous framework. When we think of an Indigenous framework, we think, okay, who am I? That's where we start. What's in your heart? And that's why we're seeking staff and faculty right now to say, what are your gifts? What resonates for you? Eventually, we're going to reach out to students and ask them the same question so we can match those two groups together. And then reaching out to the extended community, the people who are stakeholders to this school, and saying, you know, what are your gifts? And how can you be a part of celebrating diversity?
Gifts is looking at really how individuals are holding gifts within themselves that they may or may not have expressed, and providing a safe place to do that. You're then able to find not only similarities with others in a mentor relationship, but also you're able to express, the joy and happiness that comes with that.
My involvement in the logo existed already, and I was asked to add some Coast Salish elements to it. They're part of Coast Salish art, but they don't have specific meanings themselves. But to include those symbols is recognizing local First Nations, is recognizing Indigenous culture.
The diversity circles to me means the many circles we have of relationships within this institution and outside this institution, and how those influence each other.
When we have an opportunity to listen and hear other people speak, they find something like, oh, I have that, or I feel that. We're all connected in a similar goal here.
When we increase understanding of each other, then we can have, a better and more positive relationship. And when we can be more empathetic to each other, we can support each other in doing our best work.
Reaching out to students and meeting their needs. That's what Diversity Circles is about.
I think having diversity is super important, otherwise institution itself won't be able to move forward and continue its adaptive capacities in being innovative and generating new ideas.
Everyone's different and everyone's got a different way that they want to live in this world, and I think if you can respect that and respect how they want to be living, to me that's diversity. It's giving that space for everyone to be who they want to be.
The success would be that our faculty and our staff feel very comfortable with celebrating diversity, and for our students to see a place for themselves so that they feel comfortable here, they feel welcomed here.
We're going to honor your gifts. And here's the champions that are at this college already who are going to lead the way.
Okay, so now we're going to continue on with the remaining two speakers. So I'd like to invite up Bethany. So Bethany is an Associate Dean of Computing at BCIT. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Hello.
So Bethany wrote a short biography for us. And in it, she said that, I apologize, I'm finding my spot. So in your bio that was published, when you started as Associate Dean of Computing, you're described as a champion of getting girls into technology, presenting at events like Microsoft DigiGirls Day, and as a co-organizer of the 2007 International Women in Machine Learning Workshop and keeping them in tech. In your experience, what helps attract women and girls to tech, and what keeps them there?
Great question. I think there are actually two separate issues. One is getting them in, and one is keeping them. So getting them in, I think, is exposure. It's kind of come up a few times where it's harder if it's a choice. Right? So many, I'm like many of the stories that came up before, where I just always had a computer in my house, and it just always did it, and it was fun, and I wanted to be like my brother, and so I programmed. Great. And so it wasn't actually a choice, it was just something I enjoyed doing, like anything else. And especially when you're at the point of choosing where you want to go in college, university, or BCIT, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And if you don't have a model to look up to say, that is a career, most women go into something like teaching or doctors or roles that they've seen before. And so if they haven't seen a programmer, then maybe they don't know that they can be a programmer. And so I think it's just exposure. And I think the problem is actually particularly bad at BCIT because you don't have people switching majors, right? So I've addressed this with people at UBC where, they don't apply for their major until third year, sorry. And so they've possibly seen it as a general elective. And so they got exposure. So I think exposing people at a younger level, at a younger age to computing is probably the best way. Now, keeping is a very different story because as everybody that has read a newspaper this summer, there's just harassment and uninviting experiences in the workplace. And I think that's something that that men and women and just the entire environment needs to change and recognize that everybody has value to be in the workforce, and that's no matter what your difference is, that just needs to be, you have to have inclusive workplaces. And so the more diverse the classroom or and I think we can start in the classroom actually, where if we teach our students how they should behave with people that are different from them, then they will then go into the workforce and they can state in their workplace, hey, that's not cool, right? Because everything needs a champion. And so the people with the loudest voices are the ones that are actually look the same, that act the same, and that speak out for the people that are different. And so I think training the guys in CST will help the workforce be better and be more inclusive for women as well. So I think it's really, and that's all forms of diversity.
Does any of the talks or speeches that you did with any of the previous organizations, do you think that any of that could be implemented at BCIT?
I think at BCIT I think having the support, like Women Who Coding for All, I think that really helps to have the mentors when you get the frustrations and know that you've been there before. Having people like Morella who are really mentors for their students. It's one of the reasons why I got into it. I had an amazing undergraduate instructor who said, "Hey, you're doing well in computer science. Do you want to do that for a living?" And I was like, "Oh, I never really thought of that. I guess I could." And so the idea of mentorship, the idea of support, the idea of sharing the struggles. I think that those are really valuable and will continue to help foster. And I think the outreach really helps. So I know we're trying really hard to, this summer we were part of an initiative to try and teach teachers in K-12 how to program, so that programming goes into the K-12 system. The previous government did want everybody to understand how to code and put it in the K-12 curriculum. So BCIT can do some of that and continue the outreach to make sure that everybody does get exposure to programming so that people can decide. And to speak to what the research that Stephanie and Morello did, everybody who has seen coding before and then comes to BCIT, they do better. Like, it's just, if you've seen coding before, then when you go into a program where you're programming, well, you're going to be better at it, right? So why not extend that and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to? And so right now, I think we're at a generation where the women who are doing it, their dads or moms have done it before, and that's actually the only people that are coming into BCIT to do it, is because they have that role model. And so trying to get out and do the outreach. And so we have some fantastic faculty that are doing that outreach, and they are going to the high schools, and we have the High School Educator Day next week maybe, where we're trying to let also guidance counselors know, hey, this is a career that women can do and can be very successful at. So just getting the word out that it is a role for everybody, and then once they get there, supporting that, and if you're not in that group, being a champion for people that are in that group, to say, you know what, you maybe hadn't thought of doing this job or being promoted, but I've been so fortunate to have several champions in my career, and I wouldn't have done the things that I've done without them saying, why not? Why not you? Why shouldn't you be the one that's up there? And that's made a big difference.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Bethany. Now I would like to invite up Morgan to come and talk to me. So Morgan graduated from UBC Mechanical Engineering, and she is now the director of I apologize, I don't know if it's ROIT. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the acronym or the word. Wonderful. So I would like to talk to you about why you think women are underrepresented in engineering, and how does this intersect with underrepresentation in LGBTQ2?
So, I go everywhere with notes because it's way easier than sitting there like a blind fish staring. So first I wanted to thank Elder Dumont for talking about function and dysfunction. And it's my belief that this has actually a lot to do with the root cause of why women are so underrepresented. And so I'm also a human rights activist, and I cause a lot of trouble in human rights. And we talk a lot in human rights about this vicious circle that starts with stigma or bias. Stigma and bias cause harm, and harm causes disengagement of the harmed. And the disengaged cause destruction, and the destruction causes stigma. And it goes again. In the destruction, of course, for exclusion of women or people who are not men, non-binary persons in the STEM universe, of course, is people who quit in school or people who quit in their job. Of course, BCIT is very concerned with the education layer, and I'll get to that very soon. But I wanted to throw some stats because I think it's important to call a spade a spade. First of all, a March 2017 survey in the US got 12% of millennials identifying themselves as non-binary transgender, which is a really strange number. But actually they conflated possibly non-binary, which is I don't want to be treated like a man or a woman, with transgender, which is cross-sex identities, or there's a whole debate about that, but we'll leave that alone. But anyways, 12%, 20% responded that they were members of the LGBTQ2 plus community. 1 in 5. So, first thing, patriarchy isn't dead, sadly, but its foundation is crumbling. And it's reflected in society, and educators need to reflect this fact. I don't know how many of you start your introduction by Sir, Ms., Mr., Mrs. Stop that. Okay, now, women and non-men. 1.5 times as many women leave STEM as men after the first year of calculus in post-secondary. That's like right there is a problem, right? They got to that course. How come they didn't feel the support they needed? I really empathize with that statistic. I failed Calc 101 3 times. And yet I persisted. Jezebel talks about the fear of failure being a root cause of departure from STEM fields in post-secondary. A very, very sad statistic. So whereas 1 in 4 men with a STEM degree have a STEM job, 1 in 7 women with a STEM degree has a STEM job. And more chilling is something that we have to do something about, which is what kind of job is that? 1 in 10 engineer or scientist jobs is held by a woman. 1 in 10. Let's fix that. So, how do we fix it? I've got 2 minutes. Ta-da! So, first of all, the chicken and the egg. I have to try that again. Things I've heard. You suck at math versus girls suck at math. Right? You see somebody making a mistake, if it's a dude seeing a dude do it, it's like, oh, you're shitty at math. But when it's a guy who sees a girl make that same mistake, it's like girls are bad at math. That goes back, of course, to the math is hard trope, right? Nerd girls are broken somehow. No MRS degree for you if you go into the hard sciences. I mean, we're talking about really like low stereotypes here. Then the educators can put an end to this by fighting those tropes back. Next, so alienating students. You need to make sure that the students in your classes are diverse in their subgroups. That's very important. Break them up whenever you break them up into student teams, and make sure that you alternate the leader. So you keep them together, but one time it's person A, next time it's person B, next time it's person C who leads. Everybody gets to do each role in that little team. I've got 30 seconds. I'm going to go back to my best part, the toxic cesspool. Quote, perhaps the most recent and egregious act of public bro-dudism was displayed at this year's TechCrunch Disrupt. This is 2014. A panel featured Tit Stare, an app designed to help presumably male users take photos of themselves staring at the female form. A clever tagline offered by one of the app's creators, so the team at a panel at a major international conference, quote, it's the breast, most titillating fun you cans have. 2014, right? In front of their peers. You're the educators. You have to make patriarchy and sexism and discrimination feel to your students like farting in church. Basically, it can't be done, right? It's not socially acceptable. That's it. Thank you.
All right. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. That is the conclusion of our panelists, and what a conclusion that was. Thank you. So I will hand off the mic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great conclusion. Thanks, Morgan. I want to thank all the panelists again. I want to thank our moderator, Joanna, again. Thank you all for coming. If you're able to stay a few minutes, I know some people have a tight schedule crunch. If you're able to stay a few minutes and just keep talking with your peers, I know, and the panelists, I know that we had to cut the roundtable pretty short to stay on schedule. I want to just remind everyone that Mirella and her student team are still doing ongoing research. So if you're interested in that, please seek out Mirella, get involved. Similarly, Catherine Golder, if you could stand up for a moment, Catherine. Catherine is the faculty champion who helped envision this panel, and Catherine is doing ongoing research, and Catherine and Joanna want to see more panels, more events, more conversations in different formats or whatever. So please seek out Catherine Golder also, who's in the communication department at BCIT. And Catherine is reminding me, please fill out Part B of your survey. Don't forget Part B of your survey, and don't forget that you're welcome to take these fine diversity circles notepads home with you, as well as your FSA pen. And I do have gifts for the panelists and the moderator and Catherine, so don't rush off too quickly. But this will also be posted. The video will be posted. There'll be a link on our Diversity Circles website to BCIT's Vimeo channel. So this video will be posted probably within about 24 hours. So we can continue to spread the word about that. Did I forget anything, Kyla? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And please stick around if you can.